The house loomed over Emily like a watchful gargoyle. It was a relic of a bygone era, with crumbling stone walls and a roof sagging under the weight of time. Towering pines encircled the house, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. Their shadows stretched long and menacing across the overgrown lawn, swallowing the sunlight and plunging the house into perpetual gloom. The old house was Emily's inheritance, a gift from her great-aunt Eleanor, a woman she had never met. Emily stepped out of her car, the gravel crunching under her feet. She shivered, though the day was warm. An unnatural chill seemed to emanate from the house itself, sending goosebumps prickling across her skin. Taking a deep breath, she approached the front door, its surface weathered and cracked. The iron knocker resembled a snarling beast, its eyes two tarnished gemstones. As she pushed open the door, a musty odor, the smell of decay and forgotten things, wafted out to greet her. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that pierced through the grimy windows. Cobwebs, thick and grey, hung from every corner, shrouding the furniture in a ghostly embrace. The house creaked around her, a low, mournful groan that seemed to echo through the empty rooms. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, Emily felt a strange pull towards the house. It was as if the house itself was reaching out to her, beckoning her to uncover its secrets. Little did she know that some secrets are best left undisturbed. The next morning, a rattling sound woke Emily. She realized it was just the wind gusting through the ancient trees outside her window. The branches scraped against the glass, sounding like fingernails on a chalkboard. She got out of bed and went to the window, gazing out at the gloomy landscape. A figure was moving in the distance. It was an old woman, her back bent with age, slowly shuffling up the overgrown path towards the house. Emily watched as the woman approached, her heart pounding in her chest. Could this be a neighbor coming to pay their respects to the new resident? She hurried downstairs to greet her visitor. The old woman stood on the doorstep, her face a roadmap of wrinkles. Her eyes, though, were sharp and piercing, like those of a hawk. "You must be Emily," she said, her voice raspy with age. "I'm Mrs. Hawthorne, your neighbor." Emily invited her inside, offering her some tea. Mrs. Hawthorne accepted, her gaze sweeping around the foyer, lingering on the grand staircase that spiraled up to the floors above. "This old house," Mrs. Hawthorne began, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It holds many secrets, secrets best left undisturbed." Emily's interest piqued. "What do you mean?" she asked, her pulse quickening. Mrs. Hawthorne leaned closer, her breath warm on Emily's ear. "Stay out of the attic, child," she rasped. "There are things up there, things you wouldn't understand." With that, she finished her tea, refused any more, and left as quickly as she came. The old woman's warning echoed in Emily's mind. Stay out of the attic. But why? What could be so terrible, so frightening, that it warranted such a warning? Curiosity, like a persistent itch, gnawed at her. She tried to ignore it, to focus on unpacking and settling into her new home, but the attic, shrouded in mystery, held an irresistible allure. Days turned into nights, and still the attic beckoned. Emily found herself drawn to it, her hand hovering over the doorknob at the end of the hallway. It was as if the house itself was whispering to her, urging her to unlock the secrets hidden within its depths. One afternoon, she could resist no longer. She had to know what lay beyond the attic door. The air grew heavy and cold as she ascended the creaking stairs. Dust covered everything, a thick blanket of neglect. Cobwebs spun by monstrous spiders stretched across the rafters, shimmering in the faint light that filtered through the grimy window. The attic was a treasure trove of forgotten memories, filled with dusty antiques, faded portraits, and yellowed letters tied with ribbon. Emily ran her fingers over the objects, each one a tangible link to the past. As she ventured deeper into the attic, she noticed a peculiar chill in the air. It was as if a cold spot had settled over the room, sending a shiver down her spine. The air felt heavy, oppressive, making it difficult to breathe. She pressed on, drawn by an unseen force. In the far corner of the attic, partially hidden under a moth-eaten tapestry, stood an ornately carved full-length mirror. It was taller than Emily and wider than any she had ever seen. The frame was crafted from dark, heavy wood, its surface etched with intricate designs that seemed to writhe and shift in the flickering light. The mirror itself was cloudy, obscured by a thick layer of dust and grime, as if it had not reflected an image in decades. Intrigued, Emily approached the mirror. She reached out a trembling hand and wiped away the dust with her sleeve, revealing a glimpse of her reflection. Or at least, she thought it was her reflection. The face staring back at her was not quite right. The eyes were too wide, too intense, burning with an unnatural light, and the lips, drawn into a thin, cruel smile, seemed to twitch, as if the reflection itself was alive. Emily shook her head, attributing the strange reflection to the poor lighting and her own overactive imagination. She continued to explore the attic, trying to ignore the unsettling feeling that she was being watched. But the mirror held a strange power over her, drawing her back again and again. As the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows across the attic floor, Emily found herself standing before the mirror once more. This time, there was no mistaking it. The reflection staring back at her was not her own. It was the face of a young woman, her features twisted into a mask of pure malice. Her eyes, burning like hot coals, seemed to bore into Emily's soul. Terror, cold and paralyzing, gripped Emily's heart. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. Her breath caught in her throat, her lungs burning as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. She tried to tear her gaze away from the horrifying visage in the mirror, but it was no use. She was transfixed, held captive by the reflection's malevolent stare. The figure in the mirror moved. It reached out a hand, its fingers slender and pale, tipped with long, sharp nails that gleamed like obsidian in the fading light. The nails scraped against the glass, sending a shiver down Emily's spine. A low, guttural growl filled with rage and hunger emanated from the mirror, seeming to vibrate the very air around her. Emily stumbled backward, her heart pounding against her ribs like a drum. She wanted to run, to escape the attic and the horrifying mirror, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. She watched in terror as the figure in the mirror grew larger, its features becoming more distinct, more menacing. The figure's eyes, burning with a cold, unholy fire, locked onto Emily's, holding her captive. It was as if the reflection was trying to reach out to her, to break free from its glassy prison and drag her into the mirror's depths. Terror lent speed to her frozen limbs. Just as Emily managed to turn away, the unimaginable happened. The mirror shattered, a deafening explosion of glass and wood. Shards flew through the air, glinting like 1,000 evil eyes in the fading light. Emily screamed, throwing her arms up to shield her face. But it was too late. The figure from the mirror, no longer a reflection but a horrifying reality, lunged out of the shattered glass. Its touch was icy cold, like the grave, sending a jolt of pure fear through Emily's body. She thrashed against its grasp, but it was no use. The figure was incredibly strong, its grip unbreakable. It dragged her towards the shattered remains of the mirror, its touch draining the warmth from her body, replacing it with an unspeakable dread. Emily's terrified screams were swallowed by the shadows of the attic as she was pulled, struggling in vain into the mirror's cold embrace. The shattered glass reformed around her, trapping her within its depths, her own terrified reflection staring back at her from the other side. Then, silence. The attic stood empty. The only evidence of the struggle, a pile of shattered glass and the lingering chill of fear. Weeks later, Emily's family arrived at the old house, their hearts heavy with worry. They had received no word from her, no response to their calls and messages. As they pushed open the creaking front door, their worst fears were confirmed. The house was empty, devoid of any sign of Emily, but in the dusty attic, amidst the cobwebs and shadows, a single object remained. An ornately carved mirror, its surface reflecting the terrified face of a young woman trapped within.